Already live. Okay, good morning. Welcome to the session on C++. Yesterday we have discussed a few points about object-oriented programming. Let me revise all that points quickly so that we can move ahead. So in the last session, we have discussed few points like this, like what is C++. We have defined the language C++, what it means. Actually, it is general purpose case sensitive preform object oriented procedure and generic programming language. It is middle level language. It supports many concepts like object, class, inheritance, polymorphism, abstraction, and encapsulation. Then we started discussion about the advantages of OPM. I told you there are three main advantages. One is development and maintenance is easier. Then it supports data hiding, which is important feature. And then we discussed about it is easy to simulate the real world events by using object oriented programming. So these are three important advantages of OPM, I can say. Then we moved on to the concept called as object, and object is a real world entity. It can be car, it can be bird, or even it can be a simple box. And then we discussed that it consists of, or it has two things, either state and behavior. State means data or attributes of that object, and behavior means functionality, what we are going to do with that particular object. And it is a runtime entity created at runtime. It is instance of a class and all that thing. Then we discussed about a class, and we don't mean class means a group of board students sitting in the room. The class is a data type, user defined data type in C++, and then it works as an object creator, blueprint for creating object. And from a class, or by using a class, we can create many objects, okay, which shares the same attributes, or which will get the data member functions. Then we discussed about a class. We discussed about a concept called as data abstraction. It is a process of providing essential details but hiding the internal details which are not required by the user. It can be achieved through header files, or it can be achieved by using classes. When we are doing it by using classes, we have to use access specifiers, public access specifier and private access specifier. Public is accessible from anywhere in the program, whereas private is accessible only through the member functions. That also we seen through the example in the last session. Then we started discussion about how to define a class. So class is defined basically by using a keyword class. It can consist of private section, it can consist of public section, and it looks something like this. Private section normally consists of variables or the data members which are sufficient to describe the object for which we are writing this particular program, and they are not accessible from anywhere. The public section normally consists of functions, which normally consist of operations that we wanted to perform during our program. And then there is a functions outside the class, which is normally a main function. And main function can have access, direct access to the public member functions present in the class, whereas member functions of a class can have access to the data members. The thing is, the outside class functions like main cannot access private data members of a class directly. This is restricted. So this is data hiding or data abstraction. And the concept of putting data members along with member functions together inside single container is something called as data encapsulation. So there are three terms which are very closely related with each other. One is data abstraction, that is providing essential details but hiding other details which are not required by the outside world. Then second is data hiding. It is the process by which we are not allowing outside functions to directly access the private data members of a class. This is data hiding. And data encapsulation is the process of putting data members and member functions together inside one container is called as data encapsulation. So these three words are very important and mainly asked in the interviews, that what do you mean by data hiding, what do you mean by data encapsulation, and what do you mean by data abstraction. Actually these are closely related with each other, and I hope you will be able to explain them very well when the question comes on this particular topic. in the interviews, right? Then we started discussion again about object, that how to create object. Then when I create object, what the object will get, what is the diagram of the object, what will happen if we create multiple objects like this, R1, R2, R3, and then every object like R1, R2, and R3, they will get separate copy of data members provided they are non-static data members. And all the objects shares the member functions like input and area. They are shared by the three objects R1, R2, as well as R3. So when a function tries to access data members like L and W, then the question is actually whose data member it will access, and that we have discussed in the last session, that it will access the data members of a object on which it is called. Like when I say R3.input, the R3 the input function will be able to see only R3 object. R1 and R2 are hidden from it. So by default, L and W will be accessed from R3 object. This we have seen through example in the last section. So this is a quick review. Then I have listed all the member functions that we have to go through during this session. So these are types of member functions that we can have inside a class. And in the last session, we have already discussed about the first type, that is non-static member function. Then we have discussed about static member function. This we have finished in the last session. This also we have finished in the last session. Then today we have to see what is non-inline, what is inline member function, what is constructor, what is destructor function, and then what is function overloading, what is operator overloading, and maybe up to friend function we will reach today. Remaining three functions maybe we will discuss in the tomorrow's session. So this is today's outline, that we have to discuss these different types of member functions that can be present inside a class. Then in the last session, I have already given you the difference between non-static and static member functions, as if you recall, because this is important topic. Many a times in the interview, they ask you the question about a static member function. What is the difference between a static member function and non-static member function? So static member functions, basically they are a property of a class. They are not a property of any object. So they are independent of the object. They are normally not called by using object, because it is useless to call them by using object, since they cannot access the non-static data members of a class. So it is useless to call them by using object name. They are normally called by using class name. And they cannot access non-static data members, and they do not have access to this pointer. This pointer is again another concept, that is string. So this pointer we will be discussing very shortly. Then let us take a quick recall of what happens when I got this type of thing inside my class. So normally in a class we can consist of non-static data member, we can consist of static data member, we can consist of non-static member function, and we can consist of a static member function. Now let us take a quick quiz, that if I ask you a question, non-static member function of a class can access which other things from a class? Non-static member function of a class, that means this non-static member function of a class can access which other things in a class? That means, can it access this? Can it has access to this? Does it have access to this? Because these all are present inside the class. Non-static member functions of a class is having access to which parts or which other things present in the class. So you can start replying on a comment box. Your work starts now. Name the things which are accessible by non-static member function. Yes, students, I am not able to see any answer up till now. Start replying again. I will repeat the question. Non-static member function of a class can access which other things from a class? Yes, Sachin Pathak came to all. Very good. Any other answer? Rudula says all. Any other? Non-static member function can access all types of class members. Jinal. Very good, Jinal. So, okay, fine. That means the things are quite clear. So, if I take back you to the slide, then yes, non-static member function can have access to non-static data member of a class. It can have access to the static data member of a class also, and it can have access to the static member function of a class also. That means, in fact, it is having access to all other things present inside the class. Now, the next question is about the static member function. Now, if I ask you a question, which other things from a class are accessible by using static member function? So, static member function, is it able to access all other parts of the class? That means the question is it able to access a non-static member function? Is it able to access static data member? Is it able to access non-static member function? So static member function of a class, does it have access to all remaining in the class or to whom it has got access? Start answering. Yes, Sneha Kate answered static data member only. Any other answer? Static member function has got access to whom? Yes, Jasmine came in. Can access only static elements, static data member, and static member functions. Aditi Pawar says static data members can only be accessed. Any other answer? Only static data member, Shubham. Sachin Pathak says all other than non-static data member. All other than non-static data member. I will just put his answer on the screen. Sachin Pathak says all other than non-static member. Modula says static member function can access static data member and static functions. So this is a small misconception. Just I wanted to clear this misconception, and therefore I deliberately asked this particular question. What Sachin Pathak is saying is absolutely right. That it has got access to all other than non-static member. It cannot access only non-static data members of a class, but it can access static data members, it can access non-static member functions, and it can access other static member functions also. That means if I go back into this slide, let me again show you that to whom it is having access. So static member function can access non-static member function. This is what is missing in the answers of many students, but this is allowed. Static member function can call non-static member function present inside a class, right? Then it can also have access to the static data members of a class. This is allowed, but what is not allowed is this. Static member function cannot access non-static data member of a class. So I hope this particular misconception I have removed through the example. You can check it out. If possible, I will also show you the example where these restrictions, or we can clearly check that this is allowed and this is not allowed. So I think fine. We have revised whatever we have completed till the last session, and now we will start the new points. So to begin with today's session, we have to discuss another member function type that is called as constructor, and we have to answer the question, what is constructor? So basically, a constructor is something or somebody who builds or who constructs. Okay, so that is a constructor. That is English meaning. I've shown you the picture also. In object-oriented programming, a constructor is a member function of a class. It is basically a member function. Mind well, this is a member function of a class which possess following characteristics. So it is not like a normal member function. It has to follow some characteristic. It has to have some properties, and these properties are important, which are mainly asked in the interview questions. Right? How do you differentiate constructor from other member functions of a class, because it is also a member function of a class like other member functions we defined: input, area. If you remember, in the last session's program we have also already defined it. So what are its characteristics? The first thing is that its name is same as that of class name. So this is first requirement. It is a member function of a class, but its name should be same as class name. So if my class name is rectangle, then name of this member function, which should act as a constructor, should be also rectangle. So if class name is rectangle, name of the function should be also rectangle. Then second characteristic is, you need not have to call it explicitly, or in fact you should not call it. It will get invoked or called automatically whenever we create object of the associated class. So whenever we create object, for example, there is a class rectangle, and whenever we write a command, let's say rectangle R1, the moment this command gets executed, that means the object will get created, automatically the constructor of that class will get called. You need not have to call it explicitly. So no explicit call required. Whereas in other type of normal functions, the functions may not get executed or will not get executed unless and until you do not call them. So I hope this characteristic is again a important characteristic, that they will get invoked automatically whenever object is created for that particular class. Right? Then the next important property of a constructor is, they should be declared in private section. This is again a very important property. You cannot declare them in the public section. They should be declared, they should not be declared in the private section. They should be declared in the public section, because the reason is very simple. If I declare them inside a private section, or if I define them inside a private section, then they will not be accessible from outside class. That means in main, when we create an object, they will not be it will not be able to call, because it is in the private part of the class. So it is extremely necessary that they should be declared and defined inside the public section of a class. So I hope you have understood this characteristic. Then they do not have return type. This is again an important thing. For every other type of a function, we must write a return type, then name of a function, because return type decides what the function will return when it gets executed, whether it will return integer value or float value or double value or character, or it will return nothing. So when it is not returning anything, normally we write void keyword, but even that is not required when we are defining a constructor. So not even void, it should not have any return type, not even void. This is the important characteristic of a constructor. Then the next thing is related to the difference between C++ object oriented programming and Java object oriented programming. I hope most of you already learned Java. And if you remember, in a Java, when we want to create the object, the syntax is, let's say rectangle is the class, and if I wanted to create the object in Java, mind well I am discussing about a Java, what we have to write is rectangle R1 is equal to new rectangle open close brackets semicolon. If you remember that how the objects are created inside a Java, we need explicit use of new operator. Java doesn't allow creation of variables without using new operator if the variable is not of a basic data type. Are you getting what I mean to say? If I wanted to create a variable of integer type in a Java, it is very simple. I can write int x. Their new operator is not required. Variable x is created, the memory is reserved for it, and we can start storing data inside it. But whenever we are creating array, which is user-defined data type, user-derived data type, or whenever we are creating object which is user defined data type variable, Java says you must explicitly use new operator. So this is inside Java. But see, what is the thing inside C++? Whenever the constructor is getting called, it will make implicit call to new operator for creating or reserving memory for the object that we are creating and for storing data inside it. So this is a very important difference, as you can say, between C++ and Java. If somebody asks you what is the difference in the process of creation of object, because in C++ also I can create object, in Java also I can create object. What is the difference in creating the object in C++ and in Java? So the answer is very simple. In C++, we can create object without using new operator because it is implicitly called by the constructor of a class. Whereas in Java, we cannot create object without using new operator. If at all I try to create object without new operator in Java, then it will not create object. It will create a reference. There is a difference between the reference and object in Java. In C++, we can create a reference of a class, and that is called as a pointer. So pointer concept is there in C++, so there is no reference concept. But in Java, since pointers are not there, they have given this provision of creating a reference. And they made a difference in the syntax that when you want to create a reference of a class, you should write rectangle R1, semicolon. This will create a reference for the class rectangle. And when you want to create object for a class, we have to write rectangle R1 is equal to new rectangle. That will create object. So anyways, I hope the main point of discussion you have already understood, that what is the difference in creating object in C++ and creating object in Java. C++ doesn't require explicit use of new operator while creating object. Java requires explicit use of new operator when we are creating object. So I hope this difference you will remember. And then you will say, what if I would give the constructor in my class? And in that case, the objects will not get created, because as per this thing, what we are saying, that whenever object is created, it will automatically call a constructor, and then it will reserve a memory by using new operator, and then it will initialize data members of that object. What if the constructor is not present? The answer is very simple. C++ compiler says, don't worry, if you don't write constructor explicitly on your own, then fine. I will provide my constructor for your class, which will be invisible. Its code will not be there inside the class. But by default, every class will consist of constructor, no matter whether you are writing it or not. If you write it, it is fine and well and fine. It will be considered as a constructor. But if you do not write it, C++ gives default constructor in every class that you define. Fine. So the question can be like this, that whether every class in C++ is consisting of a constructor. True or false? The answer is true. No matter whether you are writing or it is given by compiler, every class will consist of a constructor, because its job is to call or make implicit use of new operator, reserve the memory, and initialize the data members of the object. So unless the memory is not reserved, we cannot use it for storing the data. And then lastly, this is a very important point, characteristic of a constructor, that they cannot be inherited. Okay, so we cannot inherit the constructor from base class to the derived class. So derived class cannot inherit the base class constructor. The reason is very simple. If I say those who are knowing inheritance, they may be knowing inheritance is the process in which we derive a new class from the existing class, so that we will get all the properties of the existing class available in the new class. So new class will acquire all the properties of the existing class or parent class. Parent class also may consist of a constructor. So that is a property of a parent class. Will it get inherited into the derived class? The answer is no, because it is useless to do that. Because base class or existing class and new class will definitely have different names. So their constructor names has to be different. So it is not, you can say, useful to inherit the constructor of base class into the derived class, because it will no more act as a constructor for the derived class since the names are different. But yes, from the derived class, we can access or we can call constructor of a base class. That is possible. So we will see these all things very shortly in the topic in inheritance, not now. But as a property or as a characteristic, you should know that constructors cannot be inherited. Right? Then there are types of constructors. We can have three different types of constructors. One more property I missed, the constructor cannot be virtual. You cannot make constructor as virtual, because virtual functions will never get executed. They are virtually present, but they are not meant for execution. But constructor is required to be executed every time when we create object. So the reason is very simple, and the property is clear that constructor cannot be virtual. You cannot write a virtual constructor, right? And as I told you, that constructors can be of three different types. One is default constructor, second type is known as parameterized constructor, and third type is known as copy constructor. So copy constructor is skipped many a times from the discussions because it requires the knowledge of pointer. Without pointer and reference, you cannot make use of a copy constructor. So I will also keep it pending right now. But what we can do is we can go into the program and we will see through the program that how to write the different types of constructors in our program and how it is different than the normal member function. So okay, fine. I will take you to the Turbo C IDE again. Very good. I hope this IDE is now visible to all. Right. Make the entire window covering on the IDE. I will just remove this. I guess I have got some doubts. This is a static member function being accessed by a static, and what if the static member function being accessed by a static member function uses a non-static data member? Is the non-static member function still accessible by the static member function? Yes, I will come to this point later on. I'm not getting what exactly you want to say. What if non-static member function is being accessed by static function, uses a non-static data member? Is the non-static member function still accessible by the static member function? Yes, I got it. We will discuss about it later on. While program execution, non-static member function is accessed by non-static member. So that, okay, I do not understand that explanation. Sorry. Okay, so just Jasmine, we'll come back to this particular point sometime later. Please wait. I just wanted to remove this from the screen. Please wait. Okay, and now I think entire screen will consist of only the IDE, and I'm not visible. Okay, fine. So now what I will do is we will try to write a simple program which will implement the concept called as constructor. So we will begin normally with the hash include, let's say iostream dot h, Then I will write hash include, let's say conio.h. Then I will start defining a class. Let's say name of the class is rectangle. Okay, and inside this class rectangle, let us take private data members. So private data members, let's say I will take a data member, sorry, not void. I will take a data member float, as we have already taken in the last session. Let's say float L for length and W for width. Then I will take public member functions. So let's declare public member function. Let's say void input. Yes, I missed one concept, non-inline and functions, that I have not discussed. So in the first, or okay, we will discuss constructor first, and then we will see what is inline and non-inline function characteristics. So in void input, I just wanted to ask a question to the user that length and width, and then we will read it by using L, in L and W. So this will read the length and width of a rectangle, and then I will write another member function, let's say void area, and inside this member function we will simply display calculate and display area. We will say area of rectangle is equal to, and we will say L into W. We will close this, we will close this. So if you are able to see in this particular class rectangle, I have defined two member functions. One is other is area. Okay. And if I ask you what is the role of the input in this particular program, so the answer is used to initialize the data members of the object. So when we write something like this inside main, let's say void main, and inside main, if I create object like this, let's say rectangle, let's say R1, let's write CLR SCR, and now the question is R1 will consist of two data members L and W. Right now they are not initialized. If at all I wanted to initialize it, what we can do is we can write R1 dot input. So this will call a member function input. And then if I ask you what the member function input is doing, so your answer will be yes, sir, it is used to initialize the object R1. And I already told you, constructors are also meant for same purpose. Constructors are used for creating and initializing the object. Then the question is, can we call input function as a constructor of a class? The answer is no, because it has to satisfy certain properties which we just now seen. So input function cannot be considered as a constructor of a class. To define a constructor, if you remember, the first rule is the name of the constructor function should be named same as name of class. So if at all I wanted to define a constructor, its name should be rectangle. So I should write let's say void rectangle, and then like this. Can we call now this function as a constructor of a class because its name is same as the class name? The answer is no, because there is second property which says it should not have any return type, not even void. So it will act something like this. So you cannot have a return type for a constructor, so you should keep it blank, and you should just write a name which will be same as class name. And then it can be used to initialize the data members of the object. So I can have some default initialization. Let's say L is equal to 0 and W is equal to 0. Then can we say this is a constructor of a class? The answer is yes. This will be considered as a constructor of a class. Okay. Then what will happen if I call it, or how to call, or how it gets invoked? So I have created object. Whenever we create object, the constructor will get called automatically. We will see it when we are editing the program. After this, I will write R1 dot area. So this will calculate and display area of the rectangle. Then I will write get ch and will end the program. This particular program. So you can see there is no problem to the compiler. If I start execution of this program step by step, if I ask the compiler to execute this program, so it goes like this. It will start from main as usual. Then you can see it is about to execute a command, rectangle R1. You know this command is made for creating object. And this will give you idea that how constructors will get invoked. I already told you they will get invoked automatically whenever we create object of a class. That means when I ask it to execute this particular command, it should in fact execute the constructor of a class. Let's say when I say when I press F7, you can see it has a jump to the function whose name is rectangle. And in fact, this is a constructor of a class. It will try and execute rectangle function as a normal function. It will use L to 0, W 0. Constructor execution is over, and we will get back to the class. So have you seen this particular property of a constructor that you need not have to call them explicitly? Whenever you create object, every time you create new object, the constructor will get invoked. So if I create 3 objects for my class, 3 times the constructor will be called. Okay. If I create 10 objects, 10 times the constructor will be called. This should be known to all. Then let us have clear screen. Then it will call input method, like this is an explicit call to the input. And now though the function rectangle and function input are performing same, what is the task they are performing? Initialization of the object. Rectangle is also initializing the object, input is also initializing the object. But are you getting the difference? The difference is the rectangle function is always called automatically. You need not have to call it explicitly. But input function will not be invoked unless and until you explicitly call it, right? So now if I proceed further, it will go for cout, it will go for cin, and now you can see computer will wait for our input. So I will provide 2 numbers as the input. The function input will be over. Now again it will come into the main. This is again a function called to the member function area. It will go into the area function. It will try to execute this cout command. The function is over. Then it will execute get ch, and of course we will get the answer. Area of rectangle is equal to 96. Oops, the spelling of area I have done incorrectly, but compiler never minds. So whatever mistakes you do inside double quote will be simply ignored by the compiler. But outside double quote, you are not allowed to make a change of a single dot. It is immediately will be immediately catched by the compiler and will give you error. So I hope you have understood that how to define a constructor for a class. So it is a very simple process. So to define a function whose name is same as class name, and it can be used to initialize the object like this. Now the doubt is, can I do this operation is performed by input, that is taking number from user and initialize the object? Can I do this operation over here? The answer is yes, you can do every operation inside a constructor. There is absolutely no restriction that yes, this can be done, this cannot be done inside a constructor. Like other member functions, each and every operation that you intend to do can be provided or can be completed inside a constructor. So if you want that, as the user enter LW and initialize the object, yes, we can do that also. I write cout and I will ask here enter, let's say length and width, and then I will write cin, I will write L, then W. Okay, and then I will remove this command, W is equal to 0. Now you can see the body of this constructor and body of input are exactly same. So now this input happens to be redundant function. It is not required, it is just a repetition. So I can delete it from my program. Now will our program work? Absolutely okay. When I say run our program like this, there is absolutely no problem. Input is not just make it run now. It's like a normal program. It will ask enter length and width. So I can enter let's say length 20 and width 4, and it will say area of rectangle is equal to 80. But have you seen a very important thing, that when the screen will be cleared after entering the numbers? Why so? Because wherever this rectangle is called, this object is created, it will first execute constructor. It will display these messages. It will read the values, and then we are executing CLR, SCR, so it will clear the screen. So we need to change a sequence little bit if you want to become, I want to have a similar output like previous thing, CLR, SCR. I will put it over here, and then I will call, or I will create the object. Now, yes, when I run it, first it will clear the screen, all previous output will be gone, you can see, and now we can enter new values and it will calculate area of rectangle. रेक्टेंगल का स्पेलिंग भी गलत लिखा है मैंने. यस आई एम मेकिंग मेनी मिस्टेक. ओके it's not n. Okay, rectangle. Fine. So I hope you have understood this constructor. This type of a constructor is known as default constructor. This is known as default constructor. To whom we will call as a default constructor? The constructor which doesn't take any parameters. That is, constructor with no parameters is known as a default constructor. It is very simple. It is known as a default constructor. But we can have a constructor which will accept the parameters, and that is called as parameterized constructor. So, can we have a constructor as a part of the same class? The answer is yes. A class can consist of many constructors. So its a name should be again same as class name. We cannot give a different name to that constructor. So obviously its name should be rectangle again. I want this constructor to accept two parameters. Let's say first parameter is AIM, second parameter of type float, let's say WID, and then when it receives the values for len and wid, then L will be assigned with the value of len and W will be assigned with the value of wid. Now this function, this member function, will also act as a constructor, and since it is taking parameters, it is a second type of constructor known as parameterized constructor. So it is very simple to write parameterized constructor. Now the question is, when we create object R1 like this, which constructor will be called? When I create object R1, rectangle R1, which constructor will be called? Because now the confusion is the class consists of two constructors. Class
Hello, dear friends. Please hold for 2 minutes. Mandar sir will be coming back. Again, I think the connectivity issue is there. So, in fact, I take the opportunity to answer one of the query. It seems the question was whether we can access non-static members from within a static member function or not. The answer to this is non-static member function enjoys privilege to access both static as well as non-static members. But when it comes to a static member function can directly access only the static members. But if we create an object inside a static member function by using that operator, by using that object dot function, non-static function name. So by using that object, we still can call and we can access, we can invoke a non-static uh, member function also.
It's been, yeah. Now I think again I'm back. Uh, am I visible to all?
Yes, sir. Visible, sir.
Okay, okay.
Mandar,
So
sir.
let me
Yeah.
share the screen.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, now the screen is being shared and it is visible. And I asked a question. So let us take some time to answer that question. That I asked you when we create the object rectangle R1. I hope my audio is clear. Yes, students. Am I audible? Sachin? Sachin? Is my audio clear now? Is it in sync with you?
Sir, you're audible and the screen what you're sharing is also visible. Please go ahead, sir. Please go ahead, sir.
Hello.
Hello, Mandar, sir. Hello.
Sir.
Sir, audible.
Sir. Is the audio clear or it is breaking? Okay, 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 that is because that may be because of slow internet connection at my end. Anyway, I cannot help. So, yes, students, I asked a question that when this type of a problem is like this, I have got a class with two constructors, no parameter, rectangle with parameters, and if I create an object like this, rectangle, then the question is which will be called by the compiler. You can start answering on the comment box whether it will call default constructor, it will call parameterized constructor, or it will call. I'm expecting answers from you in the comment box. Nihar, the voice is breaking. So let us hope the connection should get improved, and then that problem will be resolved. So please bear with this. It's breaking, Shubham. Yes, I know. Having trouble connecting. Hello. Yes. So now I hope my audio is clear and it's not breaking. So yes, Shubham said one parameterized. Otherwise,
Amit, Amit Ailani, I want you to join.
then it will complete the execution of that constructor. Then it will call area, it will display area, and then get ch, and we will be able to see area of rectangle is equal to 200, right? Okay, so now then what happened to the other constructor present in my class? It is not executed at all, because this will not be invoked unless and until we do not create object where we are passing parameters. Now how to do this? To invoke the second constructor, I will create another object, let's say rectangle R2, and then while creating this object in the brackets, in these brackets, I will specify parameters. So now this is a new thing that we are doing. So if at all we wanted to call a parameterized constructor, we should specify parameters over here. Now, these parameters will act as actual parameters. That means they will act as sender. They will send their value. The question is to whom they will send, or who will be the receivers. So these parameters which I mentioned in the definition of a constructor, float len and float wid, they will act as receivers, right? So these are called as formal parameters. Len and wid are known as formal parameters. They are receivers. Whereas whatever I specify over here, they will be considered as actual parameters and they will act as sender. For example, here I can write, let's say 3.5 as first parameter and 2.9 as a second parameter. Then 3.5 and 2.9 will act as actual parameters. When we execute this command, now this will not invoke default constructor. This will invoke parameterized constructor. Let's see how. So now I will press again F7. We will rebuild. So it will continue with main, clear screen, rectangle R1. Now you can see this will again take you to the default constructor, where it will initialize the object by taking user input, let's say 10 and 20. Now this constructor is over. Now see, when we are creating object R2, by specifying parameters. This will not invoke default constructor. This will invoke parameterized constructor. So it has taken you to the parameterized constructor, and now it will start execution of parameterized constructor. But while coming here, the first parameter will be copied into len, second parameter will be copied into wid. So we will get values in len and wid, and that we are going to assign to l and w, and then that is the completion of this function. Then it will call area, and then it will display area of the first rectangle only. Why it has not displayed area of the second rectangle? Because we have not called. We can call area function on the second also. Let's say r2 dot area, and now when I run this, not stepwise, because you understood the concept now. I have already executed it. Let's save time. So let's say 10 and 5. Then I will get something like this. Area of rectangle is 50. Area of rectangle is equal to 10.15. 10.15 is nothing but multiplication of this 3.5 and 2.9. So I hope you have understood the concept of a constructor. A class can consist of many constructors, but the restriction is it cannot consist of many default constructor. A class can consist of only one default constructor, but it can have many parameterized constructor by changing just parameters. That concept is called as basically overloading, constructor overloading. So we will very soon visit that concept, function overloading and constructor overloading. But you should remember a point, that a class can consist of many constructor, and they are invoked automatically, right? So is this concept is clear? Constructor concept is clear to all? So now I just wanted to make clear one more concept over here, that is what is inline function and non-inline function. So normally we define the function inside the class like this. Void area is the function defined inside the class. So by default, every function that we define inside a class is considered as inline function. This will be considered as inline function, provided its code doesn't consist of loops or decision making things, or its code is very small. So there is, you can say, ambiguity always whether this will be considered as an inline function or not, which is it is not clearly stated. It is purely a decision taken by compiler whether this function will act as an inline function or non-inline function. But the simplest way, if somebody asks you what is inline function, then you can answer it like this. If we define a function, a simple function, if we define it inside a class, then it will be considered as inline function. Okay, and this is normally inline function executes faster than non-inline function. But the problem is, if we define all functions inside the class, which may consisting of complicated codes also, then it's not in our hand that every function will act as inline. Even if I define it inside class, it's the decision of compiler whether it will be taken as or considered as an inline function or non-inline function. So it is not up to us, it is up to compiler. In our hand, what we can do is we can just put a request by defining them inside the class. So if I define the function inside the class, we are just requesting the compiler that yes, I have defined it inside the class, you consider it as a inline function. It depends upon the decision taken by compiler whether it will be inline or not. But book theory book rule says whenever we define a function inside a class, it will be considered as inline function. But the question is, can I define a member function outside the class? The answer is yes. Yes, we can define a function outside the class like this. So what I will do is, I will just take out this function definition from here. So I will delete it from here, and then I will define the function over here. Now, if I do like this, if I define a function here, now you have to understand the thing that this curly bracket along with semicolon, this is in fact end of a class. So our class is over there, and then we have defined function area outside the class. Then will it be considered as a member function of a class? Obviously not, because it is same like main. Main is also defined outside the class. Is the main is member function of class? No. Similarly, is the area is a member function of a class? No. So then how to make it a member function of a class though it is defined outside the class? It is very simple. What we can do is inside the class at least we should give the prototype of that function. That means I should write void area brackets semicolon. This is something called as declaration of a function, or we will call it as prototype. Prototype, or for clear understanding, I will write declaration. So if I do like this, if I declare the function inside the class, then yes, the area function which is defined outside the class will be considered as member function of a class, and there is absolutely no problem. I hope you have understood. When we wanted to define a function outside class, then it is possible, but in that case you have to give prototype inside the class to make it a member function. Let us compile this. You can see undefined symbol L and defined symbol W. Right, is saying like this. Oh, whenever we are defining function outside the class, we have to say it is a function of which class. We have to say rectangle colon colon. I already told you the reason behind this. Why this is required? Because I can have another class present in the same program whose name may be triangle, and the triangle class may also consist of a declaration of a function area. Then if I write only area, then this area will be considered as a member function of rectangle class, or it is considered as a member function of a triangle class. That is not clear. So we should always specify the scope of this function. I want this area function should be considered as a member function of a rectangle class. Okay, let us compile this. Now you can see there is absolutely no problem. So I hope you have understood writing this. By writing this, we are saying that the area, consider this area function inside the scope of the class rectangle. So it will act as a member function of a class rectangle. So this will work fine. Now, if I do like this, when I define a function outside the class, then this function will be considered as non-inline function. This will be considered as non-inline function. So I hope the difference is first difference is very clear to all of you. If you define function inside class, it is called as inline, and if you define function outside class by just giving it a prototype inside class, then it becomes a non-inline function. And the theory says non-inline function executes little slower as compared to the inline function. Now the third thing is, even by defining a function outside the class, we can make it inline, and that is by making use of keyword inline. What I can do here is I can make use of a keyword inline. So if we do like this, when I define a function by using keyword inline, then void, that is return type, rectangle is the class name in which scope this area function is, then this will be again considered as inline function. So now again I will compile this. There is absolutely no problem. When I run it, it will ask me length and width, let's say 3 and 4 or 2 and 4. So it will say area for rectangle 1 is 8, second is 10.15. So what I wanted to clear over here is there are two ways to have inline function. What are the two ways? Either define the function inside class, it will act as inline function, or second way is define the function outside the class but by using keyword inline. Then in that case that function will be considered as inline function. And The non-inline function is very simple. How to define it? Declare the function inside the class, but define it outside the class. Don't use keyword inline. That will be considered as non-inline function. So I hope you have understood the concept of inline and non-inline functions. I can see some questions. Uh, So now if you comment the non-parameterized constructor, will it give an error or will call the default constructor? Yes. Ganesh, very good question. If you do not have any constructor in your class, Java compiler inserts default constructor into your code. However, if you implement any constructor, then you no longer receive a default constructor. Yes, definitely. Yes, it is applicable in C++ as well. So now the question that Ganesh has asked is very interesting. That what he says, if you comment the non-parameterized constructor, okay, that means he wants the non-parameterized constructor should be removed. Then will it give an error or will call the default constructor? Fine. So what I will do is I will comment the non-parameterized constructor, that means default constructor, like this. Okay, sorry. So now, as all of you can see, I have commented the default constructor, and let us compile the program. So it says error. It says could not find a match for rectangle. What it says is whenever you define any constructor inside your class, the compiler will not give you default constructor. Otherwise, if it is giving a default constructor, then this error might not appear, right? So Ganesh, thank you so much for asking this question. That, and you have given the explanation. If you do not have any constructor in your class, yes, C++ compiler also inserts a default constructor into your class. However, if you implement any constructor, then you no longer receive a default constructor. This rule is correct. So I hope Ganesh you have understood. Ganesh, have you seen the execution? Just now I have shown that if I am having a parameterized constructor, the C++ will not give you default constructor. It will give you error when you call when you try to create object without any parameter, right? So now we'll move on to the next point. So constructor we have already finished. Let us go to the next type of member function, and that is a destructor. And you can see what is destructor. uh, Destructor is something who tries to or who destroys already existing things. It is important, already existing things. So in C++, what is a destructor? So you can see the destructor is also a member function of a class. So it is nothing new. It is also a member function, but it possesses following characteristics. Like constructor has got some characteristics, even destructor has to have some characteristic. So its name is again same as the name of the class, but it must start with this. This is the symbol of tilde or tilde, that is a small sine wave like this. Okay, so you must start the name of a destructor with this symbol. Okay, this is first characteristic. Second is it is also called automatically. So it is called automatically, but when the object goes out of scope or when we want to delete the object. So because destructor is used to delete the object by releasing the memory occupied by that object. So whenever the use of that object is over, when we don't want that object to remain alive in our program, then the destructor can delete it, can destroy it by releasing the memory. So they are mainly used to destroy the object. And then it does not receive any parameter. Since it is meant for deleting the object, it is useless to send any parameter to the destructor. So it cannot be overloaded. That means a class cannot consist of multiple destructors. A class can consist of only one destructor, and that is a default destructor. We cannot have a destructor with parameters. So this is one more point that you should consider. A class can consist of many constructors, but a class can consist of only one destructor. Then destructors cannot be overridden, and we cannot inherit them. So this is same as the constructor, in fact, that we cannot inherit constructor as well as we cannot inherit destructor. And then we cannot override them. That means we cannot define them into different classes, one in base and one in derived class with same name. That is not possible. So what is function overriding? We will come to this point very soon, but you should remember this as a characteristic, that destructors cannot be overridden and we cannot inherit them. Then this is again a main difference between constructor and destructor. Constructor cannot be virtual, but destructor can be virtual. We can have a virtual destructor. Constructor cannot be virtual, but destructor can be virtual. So this can be again one more question in your interview, that constructor and destructor in object-oriented programming. Both are member functions of a class. Their roles are different. One is used for building the object, creating the object. Other is used for destroying them. But apart from this, what is the difference between constructor and destructor? So I have given few points over here in my constructor and destructor slides. I hope you have understood them and you will remember them while answering this particular question. And you can see the destructor cannot have many types. There is only one type of destructor, and that is default destructor. So how to have a destructor in our program? Okay, I'm just going through some comments. So anyway, I will come back to my program. Right, so this has created error because we have provided the parameterized constructor and we have removed the default constructor. Then compiler will not give me default constructor, and that will create an error. So this program consists of only constructors. What if I wanted to have a destructor in my program? What I will do is I will try to define a function whose name is again rectangle. Since destructor cannot have parameters, this brackets has to be blank, and then to make it a destructor, it should start with a symbol like this. So this is the symbol that we must have at the beginning. So this is again exception to the rules of identifiers. If you know, identifier cannot start with any special character except underscore, but this is exception, that the identifier used for destructor has to start with the special character tilde. I call it as tilde. Some people call it as a tilde. Some people call it as a tilde. I don't know what you pronounce it as. So it is a tilde. Name of this character is tilde. So you decide how to pronounce it, right? So this is a destructor, and what we have to write as a code inside the destructor. What we will write as a code inside the destructor? It's really useless to write any code over here, because this is meant for destroying the object. So what code we will execute while destroying the object? Okay, so for our simplicity, what we will do is we'll simply write a cout command, and inside that I will write \n. Hi or hello, you are in destructor. So this will just give us idea that whether we have invoked the destructor or not, and when it is being invoked, right? So I hope everything is fine now. So I will compile my program again. So you can see that definition of destructor is accepted, and we will see when the destructor will be invoked by step execution. I will start with void main, clear screen. Now this will definitely call a default constructor rectangle. You can see execution of default constructor has begun. It will ask me LNW, let's say 5 and 6. This will complete the execution of default constructor. This will call again constructor, but this time it is parameterized. It will initialize LNW, parameter constructor is over. This will call area method. So now it is considered as inline function, though it is defined outside class. This will calculate and display area. This will again call area, then calculate and display area. This is get ch. Okay, so it will display areas of two rectangles. And now you can see when we are about to end the program, where it has reached into the destructor. So this will execute the destructor, right? Again it will enter the destructor. Why it has again entered into the destructor? So you can see 2 times the destructor is executed, and now finally it has reached to the closing curly bracket of main. So if all of you are observing, when we are about to end the execution of this program, the destructor is called 2 times. But in the program, you will see that I have never called a destructor. So it means destructor will get invoked automatically like constructor. You did not have to call it explicitly. And when it will be called, whenever the scope of the object is over. What is the scope of this object R1 and R2? The scope of the object is within this function main. So when we are trying to exit the function main, the scope of objects R1 and R2 is about to over finish. That means they should not remain alive, they should be destroyed, and therefore automatically the compiler will call destructor. And you can see the destructor is not called only once, the destructor is called 2 times, because once we call the destructor, it can destroy only one object at a time. So in our main, if I have created 2 objects R1 and R2, then definitely the destructor will be called 2 times, because every time we call it, it can destroy only one object. So if I have created 10 objects, then yes, the destructor is going to be called 10 times to destroy each and every object. So now let us finish the execution of this program. And now we have not seen that message that hi or hello, you are inside the destructor. Let's check. I can show that by going back into the output screen, and you can see on the output screen that message is displayed 2 times. Hello, you are in destructor. Hello, you are in destructor. Why 2 times? Because yes, we have created 2 objects, and destructor will be invoked 2 times. Every time one object will be destroyed. So I hope this concept is clear to all. Is this okay? Okay. Is this concept is okay to all? Constructor and destructor, and what is the major difference between these two, and when the constructor will get called, when the destructor will get called, then what happens when a destructor is called when the main consists of multiple objects. So I try to explain all that small points. Okay, now let us go back to our presentation. So I hope these all points I made clear. Now let us go to the next concept, that is called as overloading functions. So we wanted to discuss about what is function overloading. So as you can see, this is something function overloading, right? It is the process, basically function overloading is the process of defining more than one functions with same name. That all functions should have same name, but different type signatures. This is important. They should have different type signatures. So this is known as function overloading. The function should have same name, but they should have different type signatures. What do you mean by type signature of a function? Type signature of a function is nothing but what? The parameters that we are specifying inside the header. So type signature basically will consist of 2 things. That is, one is number of parameters. It is number of parameters. This is one criteria to decide the type signature, number of parameters. I am trying to write by using touchpad. So it is taking time. It is number of parameters, and it is also about the data type of the parameter. So these two things decide the type signature. That is number of parameters and data type of the parameters. They will constitute type signature. We will see it in the program. Don't worry. So the process of defining more than one functions with same name but different type signatures is known as function overloading. So basically, we wanted to have many functions with same name in our program, and they can be member of a one class. Why I'm giving this point, because when we go to function overriding, in the overriding also the things are same, that we should have functions with same name, but the thing is they cannot be present inside same class. They has to be present in different classes along with the concept of inheritance. So then we will move on to the next point, next characteristic, that there is no need to have inheritance to implement overloading. So these points I'm just keeping to get the difference between function overloading and function overriding. So whenever you write the difference, or somebody asks you what is difference between function overloading and function overriding, then these points will be really helpful for you to state what is the difference. And it is used to implement the concept called as compile time polymorphism. So this is again a very important object-oriented term. Polymorphism, ability to take different forms, is known as polymorphism. And compile time polymorphism can be implemented through the function overloading. What it is, we will see through the example. So let us see. Let us say I am having three different objects. I am having object 1 rectangle, object 2 triangle, and object 3 circle. And I wanted to calculate area of these three different objects. So as you all know the mathematics, you know the area of rectangle will be calculated by performing L into W, right? So this is how we calculate area of rectangle. So the formula for area of rectangle is this. How to calculate area of triangle by observing three sides? Then we need to do this. That is S into, we need to write S minus A, if you remember. Then into we need to write S minus B, then into S minus C, and like this, and this total thing should be present under root, right? So this is how we calculate area of triangle. And of course the area of circle can be calculated by using a normal formula, that is pi r square. So what I wanted to state is, if there are three different objects with different shapes, then the formula for calculating their area will not be same, it will be different. But what I mean to do, or what I wanted to calculate, is actually area. So I can have a member function whose name will be area, and what I want is this member function area, whose name is area, should be used to calculate the area of rectangle, area of triangle, as well as area of circle. So then, can I have a single definition for this function area? Can we have a single definition for the function area? So this is the question. So have you understood what I wanted to do? I wanted to write a member function area. My problem is I wanted to calculate area of rectangle, area of triangle, and area of circle. So can we have single function definition area, or we require three different area functions? Have you understood the question? So let us get back into the comment section. Can we have single area function, single area, or we require three different area functions? So those who are in the session, they please answer. Can we have a single area function, or we require three different area functions? Shubham says single area function. Is there any other answer? The problem is I wanted to calculate area of rectangle, area of triangle, and area of circle. So should I have single area function, or I should have three different area functions? Keep giving your answer. I just wanted to check whether you are active or not. My question may be simple, but your answer is really important for me. Keep answering. I'm not able to see any more answer. Yes, another Shubham says single area function. Jasmine says if there is same way to count the number of parameters given, then we can use single area function. Otherwise, we can use function overloading with three functions. Yeah, Tanesha says different. Anybody else? Should we have single area function or three different area functions? Omkar says single area function. Omkar says single area function. Anybody else? Rishabh says three different functions with same name area and different parameters. Very good. So I think this is more correct and appropriate answer. So I will just add it to the screen. Yes, Shubham has said, Rishabh said that three different functions with same name area and different parameters. Right. So this is how we will try to implement function overloading. So have you understood the problem, what we wanted to achieve, and where we will use a function overloading? I hope my problem is clear to you. I wanted to calculate area of rectangle, area of triangle, and area of circle. But the thing is, the formula required to calculate their areas is different because the shape of these objects are different. So the thing is, I cannot have a single area function because it will calculate either the area of rectangle if I put this formula inside it, or it will calculate area of triangle if I put this, or it will calculate area of circle if I put this formula. So it is better to have three different area functions, but all are meant for calculating area. So we will give the same name area to these three functions. But what we will do is we will change the parameters. So we will have three area functions with different parameters. And what we are trying to do is this, the process of defining more than one functions with same name and different type signatures. So we wanted to implement a function overloading. So let us go to the Turbo C IDE. We'll try to write this program quickly. I will open a new file. Let's go like this, hash include, let's say iostream dot h, then hash include let's say conio dot h. Then I will define a class. Let's say name of this class is shape. Why shape? Because we wanted to have three different shapes as the objects. Okay, so now the question is, in the private data section of a class, normally we declare data members. So what will be the data members required in this case? What will be the data members required in this case? Can we have data members in our class? Because you should understand the thing that I am having three different objects. The rectangle requires length and w, that is length and width. The triangle requires three sides A, B, C, and the circle requires radius R. My question is, in my class, what will be the data members required? What are the data members required in this particular class? This is question for you. So start answering. I started defining a class for your help. I will just show you. I started defining a class, and I am facing a question that what I should declare as the data members. Start answering quickly. I hope my audio is clear to all now. I stopped my video, so that will save a lot of, you can say, data traffic. But I will not be able to see. I'm not able to see any answer. Have you got the question clearly? What I'm asking? If I wanted to define a class shape to implement just now whatever we have said to calculate the area of rectangle, triangle, and circle, what is required? What are the variables required as the data member of a class? Or the question is it logical to give the data members for this class now? Not getting answers. I'm waiting for your answers. What variables you will suggest to become a data member of the class shape? And I want this class shape, let me tell you, like this. This is end of a class inside void main, so that the things will be more clear to you. I wanted to clear objects like this. I wanted to clear objects, let's say rect. This is a rectangle object. Then I wanted to create object try. This is triangle object, and I have to create the object circle, CIR. So I wanted to create three objects for this class shape. Then can you suggest what will be the data members required over here? Yeah, I'm getting some answers. Tanisha says length, breadth, width, radius, side 1, 2, 3. LW. Karthik says LWR S1, S2, S3. Tanisha says length star. Shubham says LWABCSR. Any other answer? Think carefully. What will be the data members required? Because if you are able to understand the logical problem in this particular question, that means you have understood many of the things in object oriented programming. Okay, let me do one thing. So if many of you are thinking like these are the data members required. Let's say float, and if I take a data members L, then W, then A, then B, then C, then S, and then R. Do you think this is logically correct? Because when I create object rectangle, what the object rectangle will get? It will get the separate copy of all these data members L, W, A, B, C, S, R. Is it needed for the object rectangle? The answer is no. What is needed for object rectangle is only L and W. Then when I create object TRI, that is triangle, what will be the things present inside the object triangle? Triangle object will also get the separate copy of all these variables, that is L, W, A, B, C, S, R. Does it really require for the triangle? Absolutely not. Triangle requires only ABC, sides of the triangle, or CIR. CIR is the object of the same class shape. So does it require all these variables as the data members? No, it requires only radius R as the data member. That means this is not correct. So as Rishabh Jain, yes, Rishabh Jain said, data members not needed. It will be specified in the parameter list. So the answer is very simple. For this particular class, we should not have any private data member. Are you getting why it is not required? Now, in a simplest word, I will say like this. If the objects that we wanted to have, objects of a class, are having different attributes, then it is better not to have data members inside a class. If the objects of a class are having different attributes, then do not have data members inside the class. Means what? What are the attributes of rectangle? Length and width. What are the attributes of triangle? Three sides, A, B, C. What are the attributes of circle? Radius, R. So every object of the class, every object that I require in this program, they are having different attributes. So better we should not have the data members inside the class. I hope you are getting what I mean to say. But yes, if I wanted to create three rectangle objects for the class shape, let's say R1, R2, R3. If I wanted to do like this, if I wanted to write, let's say shape, and I wanted to create three objects, let's say R1, R2, R3, then can we have data members for this class? Yes. Because what are the attributes of R1? Length and width. Attributes of R2? Length and width. Attributes of R3? Length and width. So if attributes of all the objects are same, then you can have data members. But if the attributes required by different objects that we are creating in our for our class, if they are different, then you should not, better you should not have data members. I hope you have understood this. So let us continue. So I will not create any data member for my class. Rather, I will directly jump to the public section, and I will try to define the member functions. Let's say void area, right? But when we wanted to calculate, let's say area of a rectangle, what we need? Area of rectangle cannot be calculated without length and width. So what I will do is I will write here, let's say int L and int W. So I will take two parameters as the parameters for this method area, and then in this method area I will write cout, and I will say area of rectangle is equal to let's say L into W, right? So what is this L and W? Is this the data member of a class? No, they are local variables to the function area. They are formal parameters to the function area. They are nothing to do with the class. They are local variables. Similarly, I will again write void area. I will define second area method, and I want this area method should calculate area of a triangle. So I will take three parameters. Let's say float A, then I will take float B, and then I will take a float C. So I'm having three different parameters, and you know how to calculate area of a triangle by using three sides. We need one more temporary variable, that is S. S stands for semi-perimeter. We should calculate semi-perimeter as A plus B plus C, and this should be divided by 2. To make it more clear, let us divide it by 2.0. So there will not be any problem of automatic conversion and that thing. So it is absolutely correct thing. And then area of triangle can be calculated like this. We have to use the formula SQRT, that is square root of S into S minus A into S minus B into S minus C. Okay, so this complete thing will be present under the square root. So this is the formula to calculate area, and we wanted to display it, so I will put it inside cout, and I will say area of triangle area of triangle is equal to, and we will display this area. Let us just put backslash n at the beginning so that this will start on new line. Even here also in this cout, we will start the line with backslash n, so it will always display the things on new line. So I hope you understood this second area method. Similarly, I will define third area method. Let's say void area, and inside this I will take one parameter, let's say float r stands for radius, and then here also I will write a cout statement saying let's say backslash n, I will say area of circle, let's say area of circle is equal to, and how to calculate area of circle, it is pi r square. So what I will do is inside bracket I will write 3.1415 into r into r. So this will calculate and display area of a circle. Let's end this class by closing curly bracket and semicolon. So now you can see my class consists of three area functions, this area. And then if I ask you what is type signature of this area function, so type signature of this area function is to int int. This is called as type signature. What this two means? It's two means this function takes two parameters, and int means the parameters are integer type and the sequence is int. So this information is nothing but what? A type signature of a function. If I ask you to write the type signature of this, so can you give me type signature of this? Like I have given type signature of first area method, can you give me type signature of this? Again I am waiting for what will be the type signature for the second area function, and what will be the type signature for the third area function. What is the type signature in second area function, and what is the type signature in third area function? I'm audible? Hello.
Screen okay, okay, sir.
And when I say TRI dot area, and when I say it is 3.0, then 4.0, 4.0, and then 5.0. This will call the area of triangle. Get ch, then end of main. Doesn't matter in which sequence you call the functions, right? So if I compile this program like this, there are errors. Function sqrt should have a prototype, call up non-function, okay, and curly bracket is expected. So basically we need one more header file that I have not included. So I will write hash include math.h, because sqrt function is present inside math. And then in the problem, a plus b plus c, right. I will compile this. Where I made a mistake. Oh, I missed one. This thing. Yes, I have extra. Sorry. So it is s into s minus a into s minus b into s minus c. Let's compile it again. Expected curly bracket where, oh, 2 times I have closed the class. Right. So I will compile it again. This time it will work. Fine. Yes. Thank you so much. Compiler. Okay, it will start from void main, clear screen. Then now you can see when I say rect area 10, 20, this will jump to the first area method because the parameters in the function call and the type signature of this function is matching. So it will calculate area of rectangle and it will display it. When we say circle dot area 3.5, this will call third area because the actual parameter is 3.5, single parameter of float type, and it will match with this type signature. So it will invoke this function and it will calculate area of a circle. And this will definitely call area of a triangle because type signature is matching. So it will calculate semi-perimeter and then it will calculate area of a triangle and it will display it. And now you can see when we come to the end, it will display 3 different things: area of rectangle, area of circle, and area of triangle. So this is how we can implement the things called as function overloading. So it is the process. Function overloading is the process of defining many functions with same name and but with different type signatures. And I hope you understood the concept of type signature. So I can have multiple functions with same name. The thing is that they all can be present in the same class. There is no inheritance required to implement this. And then it is basically used to implement the compile time polymorphism. Now, what do you mean by this compile time polymorphism? The things are very simple. So instead of saying these objects like this, can I say there are 3 objects? Let's say x1, or let's say there is a single object x1, and then when I say x1 dot area like this, when I say x1 dot area like this, and when I say x1 dot area like this. Now the question is, will it call same area function, single area function, or will call 3 different area functions? Because the object is single, I'm using single object x1 for calling area 3 times. So the first x1 dot area, to whom it will call? Obviously the area function whose type signature will match with this list of actual parameters. So it will call area of rectangle. Second x1 dot area will have or is having one actual parameter with type float. So this will definitely call area of circle. And third x1 dot area is having 3 actual parameters So its a type signature will match with the area of triangle function here. So 3 and float, float, float. So definitely it will call this member function. And then again, if I run my program, not by step because we have understood that the last execution, again I will get the same answer. So now how does the compiler understands that for the same function call, you can see everywhere the function call is x1 dot area, here also, here also, here also. How does the compiler makes a difference that this time for the first it is making call to the area of rectangle, or second time it is calling area of circle, or third time it is making call to the triangle? So is it the object name that is deciding this? Is it the object name x1 is deciding that which area will be called? The answer is no. Object name is not important. So what is important to decide which area will be called is the type of the parameters that I am using. So this is the process called as compile time polymorphism. In compile time polymorphism, the compiler has got ambiguity in deciding which function should be invoked for a particular function call, because the function call appears to be same. Like you can see x1 dot area, x1 dot area, x1 dot area. In all the three calls, function call appears to be same. Have you understood the ambiguity for the compiler? Same function call is there for 3 times. Then the compiler is in a problem to decide which function should be invoked for which function call. So to decide this, what it does is it compares the parameters, type signature of the function along with the actual parameters, and it performs binding during compilation. When the compiler is compiling this particular line, what it observes is the call is x1 dot area. So now it has to decide whether first area, second area, or third area should be called. So to decide when during the runtime which should be actually executed, this decision it has to take during compilation. So, you should know the process. When we write a program, first we need to compile it, and then we can run it. Without compiling the program, we cannot run it. So compiling the program is early stage, execution of the program is latter stage. So during compilation itself, that means before actually starting execution of the program, in early stage during compilation, the compiler will check what is the actual parameter list present in the function call. So what it will understand, the actual parameters is nothing but what? Two, int and int. So it will try to find the area function in this list whose type signature is to int int, and it will find this area function is having matching type signature to int int. So it will establish a link between the function call area x1 dot area 1020. It will establish a link between this and this, and this is called as binding. So it has already taken a decision, and it will mention it in its execution table that whenever this function call appears during execution, I will definitely invoke this function. This decision it has taken, it is noted. This is called as early binding, or this is called as compile time polymorphism. Are you getting the process? The process of deciding which member function will be called when a particular function call is executed, that is called as compile time polymorphism. So this decision will be taken by compiler during compilation. So it is compile time polymorphism. Similarly, when it goes for second function call, when it is compiling, I am saying not execution, I am saying when it is compiling x1 dot area 3.5, again it will check what is the parameter specified over here. It is one float. So it will check in the list of overloading functions in the program. So it will be matching with this function header prototype. So it will decide that for second x1 dot area, this function will be definitely executed during execution stage. So this binding is performed during compiling. So it is many times the compile time polymorphism is called as early binding. Early binding. Why early binding? Because the decisions are taken by the compiler very early than the execution, and there it is called as you can say early binding, or this is also called as static binding. Why static binding? Because once the compiler has decided that for this function call it is going to call this area method, then this decision he is not going to change during the execution time. He is not going to change this decision during execution time. It will remain static. So therefore this is also called as static binding. So these three terms again are very closely related to each other. What are the three terms that just now I have said? Compile time polymorphism, that is CTP, early binding, and static binding. All these three terms are synonymous. They are, you can say, related with the same or particular concept. And that is how the compiler decides which function will be invoked for a particular function call and when it does it. That is important. When it does it during compilation, that means way before the program execution starts, and therefore this type of binding is called as early binding. And then once this linkage is established by the compiler during compile time, when it goes to the next phase, that is execution phase, compiler is not going to change his decisions. They will remain permanent. Therefore, that binding is also called as static binding. So I hope you have understood the concept of function overloading along with the important concept that is known as compile time polymorphism, or you can say early binding, or it is also known as a static binding. So is this thing is clear to all? Compile time polymorphism, early binding, and static bindings. So this is a very important thing that you should remember, because many a times in the university, oh sorry, not in university now, it is in the placement interviews, the question will be asked, what is compile time polymorphism? Uh, Yeah, the Ganesh is asking the question, what is the difference between CTP and RTP, compile time polymorphism and runtime polymorphism? So it is a very simple difference that implementation wise, Ganesh, if I wanted to say implementation wise, then uh, function overloading is must or required to implement the compile time polymorphism. So you can implement compile time polymorphism through function overloading. And what is function overloading? Functions with same name, different type signatures, and how the compiler is deciding which function will be invoked. The compiler is deciding on the basis of type signatures. So this is something called as compile time polymorphism, and this decision is taken during compilation. Now let's go to the runtime polymorphism. To implement runtime polymorphism, Ganesh, what is required is function overriding. This runtime polymorphism can be implemented by using overriding functions. Now, what do you mean by overriding functions? It is again functions with same name as well as same type signatures. Now, you can say the compiler becomes helpless, uh, which the decision he was taking during CTP is now not possible, because the functions are there with same name, and unfortunately their type signatures are also same. So compiler will not be able to decide during compilation that for this function call which function should be executed or will be executed during runtime. So this decision now is not possible for the compiler. So in this case, what happens during runtime, depending upon which object or the object is used to point which another the reference is used for pointing which object, that particular thing decides during runtime that which function will get called. So theoretically it is very difficult to explain for me, or you may not be able to visualize it, but yes, tomorrow definitely we are going to write a program to implement the runtime polymorphism. For that we require function overriding concept. So I think this is enough for the today's session. Yesterday I have forgotten the things that I have forgotten to show you the reference and textbooks. So let me do it today. Uh, So function overloading we finished. Function operator overloading. I will just give you a quick thing that what is pending in the today's session. Actually, I wanted to do this thing, that I wanted to write a program for passing object as a parameter, because that is required to understand the concept called as operator overloading. So operator overloading is pending. Passing object as a parameter to the function is pending. Friend function is also pending, so that we will see tomorrow. And then, yes, this is what I wanted to show, because I have got some queries regarding what are the things that we should refer. So, for the very basic level beginners, or those who wanted to understand the things in a very simple language, there is a book called as Object Oriented Programming with C++. It is by E. Bal Guruswamy, that is McGraw-Hill. And the things are, Bal Guruswamy tries to explain everything in a very low level language, so that it is understandable by a very new user. This is a good book for the beginner. Those who already got the concepts of C++ or object oriented, and those who really wanted to have a career in object oriented software construction, then this is going to be a very good book for them. That is C++, Effective Object Oriented Software Construction. That is concept, principles, industrial strategies, and practices. So this is a very good. It is like a reference, a very big reference book for them. Them. This is written by Keshav Dattatri, and it is you can say forward by Eric Gamma. This is a very good book. This is a big book of around 1200 pages, and this is a costly book also. So those who can get the soft copy of this, probably yes, they can try and get it, or they can purchase it if possible. This is a very good reference for C++. And of course, there is a complete reference C++ by Herbert Schild. That is also a good book. And if you just go through different websites, or on the internet, if you just see, there will be many sites which are giving tutorials for the C++. But I think they are at a very basic level. Those who are beginners, they can start with that. Those who wanted to develop a software development skills by using this object oriented concepts, then yes, this book is very good. I should also say that the language in this book is not that easy. You have to read it very carefully, but the concepts, each and every concept and requirement is explained very clearly. If you manage to get this book, just a glimpse of that book somewhere in the library, or somewhere you just go through.
Okay, I think again there is some connectivity issue, but then anyhow, Mandar sir already have concluded the today's session, and then the time spent on recap, and then followed by the concept of inline function, and then constructors, destructors, and function overloading, and a bit of a discussion on compile time polymorphism and runtime polymorphism. So it was nice spending time, okay, and trying to understand all these appealing features of object orientation. So tomorrow, as already commented, okay, Mandar sir will be taking you through the concept of an virtual function, runtime polymorphism, passing object as an parameter to the function, then operator overloading, how we can make use of an operators along with the objects of the class what we define. So this is all will be there for the tomorrow session, and that's all. Thank you very much.